Is George Russell's Aston Martin's new bond? According to another F1 legend, he should be. This is F1 Grandstand. I'm Tony Craig, and if you are an F1 fan, you are in the right place. Hit the subscribe button and the bell button now. Join the community and get involved. Let's get into it. Before I do, I can see lots of you in the chat. Oh, it's going crazy. Love it. Great to have you all in the chat. Hey, Gemma. Hey, Yvonne. Dating chat. Well, who knows? Maybe we'll have our first F1 Grandstand marriage. Maybe you'll meet the perfect person in that chat. But anyway, let's get into it. We have got Jaun Pablo Montoya causing waves in the F1 community today. So if you don't know who this guy is, I'm sure a lot of you do, but let me remind you of who Jaun Pablo Montoya is. He drove for Williams in 2001 to 2004, and then for McLaren in 2005 to 2006. His best result was he was third in the World Driver Championship with 82 points, 11 points short of the title actually, and that was with Williams in 2003. He drove NASCAR for like 8 years and IndyCars for 8 years. No championship wins, but he's a real driver's driver, very aggressive. But what has he been saying? That's what everybody wants to know. So, yeah. Well, this is a story that came from Harry Smith in the Express, amongst other outlets. Planet F1 have picked up on it as well. And this is to quote Jaun Pablo Montoya. He said, and it's all about George Russell, by the way, and the situation that's going on with George at Mercedes. So he's wading in, and he's wading in big. He says, I think the problem is George is only going to get a 1-year deal. And I think Antonelli is going to get a 1-year deal. So what Jaun Pablo Montoya is saying, if I was George and I had a good opportunity somewhere else, I would go. He continued, if Aston came today to George and offered him a seat for next year, I would take it. He should take it. And then let Mercedes realise what they have lost and figure out what they do next. Now, why has this all come about? It's because, as you've seen, you might have seen my video a couple of nights ago, Plot on a Yacht, because it was all about how Max Verstappen's on Toto Wolff's yacht during this summer break. So there's a lot going on, and then we have to tie all of that in with George Russell's contract negotiations at the moment. Now, if you were watching last night, you will know I went into this. So we've got a situation where George Russell has been driving extremely well for Williams this year, for Mercedes this year. He's definitely maximized the points that car could get. Now, he hasn't got a contract currently for 2026. He's just got like a promise at the moment from Toto saying, yeah, we want you to be our driver. Yet, as we know in the press and everything we've seen, is that Toto has been trying to secure Max Verstappen. Anyway, George Russell now has an offer on the table. Now, we were told initially it was a 2-year deal, but according to Jaun Pablo Montoya, and the reason why a contract hasn't been signed, we can deduce that what Toto has offered George is a 1-year deal. Now, after everything George has done and the loyalty he's shown, and even though he's been honestly very, very gracious, even though Toto has been literally telling him, we prefer Max to you, and if we can get Max, we'd choose him over you. But George is better than that. George should be a #1 driver, and he should know that. So they're in a situation now, well, they're playing games, because if it's a 1-year deal that George is offered at Mercedes, well, he could do a pre-agreement with Aston Martin for 2027, because all of this driver market is crazy. Because if we've got exactly the details of every driver contract and when they end. We did a show on this earlier this week. So how does it fit together with Aston Martin? Well, Aston Martin have got Fernando Alonso, whose contract is for next year. Lance Stroll's contract is for next year as well, to the end of 2026. Now, that's important because another piece of information of that puzzle is that Adrian Newey, who's designing the 2026 car, has done some pretty impressive designs around the cockpit, which I don't think we've really seen before. We've seen cockpit design, which is tailored to the driver to some degree, but it's tailored with the way the seat molding is, and it's tailored to how far away the steering wheel is from the driver's reach and things like that. So it is tailored to the driver. But what we've been hearing is Adrian Newey has found an opportunity within the cockpit design which takes that to the next level, where within the cockpit, the actual width of the cockpit and the actual they are tailoring the space in a different way to the driver's proportions. So there's a reason why Aston Martin had those drivers decided at the beginning of the year, and there's never been any discussion of changing those drivers, is because whilst Newey joined Aston Martin, he wanted to design the new 2026 car, the cockpit, around the driver's dimensions in a different way that we haven't seen before. So we've got those drivers nailed on. We've got Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll for 2026. That doesn't mean that they're going to be there in 27. Fernando Alonso he'll be nearly 46 at the end of next year. Now, even though he's quick, I do feel it's going to be the natural end because he's going to decide that that's going to be it for Formula One. So there is going to be a seat opening up in 27. Aston Martin do like George Russell. What's not to like? He is the best of the rest. Now, people have been talking about Max Verstappen going to Aston Martin. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think if we can see, even just from the evidence of this week, of Max holidaying with Toto Wolff instead of holidaying with his friends, family. He's on Toto's boat, playing on his jet skis, having his chef cook them food. Yeah, they're plotting for 27. The reason why they're not plotting for 26 is because Max's contract is until the end of 28. But there are these clauses which can allow a contract break. But those contract breaks are under specific conditions. And those specific conditions are team non-performance clauses. Now, it was looking like this year there was a possibility that the team non-performance clause would come into play. But what that meant was Max would have to be fourth or lower in the Drivers' Championship going into this break. Unfortunately for Max, he's third in the championship, which means his contract continues through to 2026, which means he is going to be driving that Red Bull the first Grand Prix of the season. And also we've got Helmut Marko saying it's never a thing. So just last week, before all of this Max and Toto on Toto's boat shenanigans has happened this week, you had Helmut Marko at Red Bull saying that it was just Toto fueling the fire. Max was never going to leave Red Bull. He's never going to leave. It's Toto stirring the pot. All right, Helmut. So that's why he's now on Toto's boat and not on your boat, by the way, on your jet skis. It's because Max knows something. And then we can tie this in to some of the reports recently about the 2026 power plant. I'm going to go into this a lot tomorrow, so I'm just going to give a quick overview about this. Tomorrow's show, I'm not spilling the beans. It's going to be all about the 2026 power units because we've done a deep dive and some really fascinating information. But just taking a little piece of that, Red Bull were the team spreading the rumor that with the new 2026 power plants, with the 50% ICE, the internal combustion engine, and the 50% electrification, it's creating problems with long straights, for instance, where it's more efficient for the car to be in a lower gear and to lift than it is for them to be in a higher gear, because they have this battle of, now it's a 50% electrification, of managing that battery. So we've had the FAA come out and say, well, we don't want cars to be lifting on the straight. We want them to be pedal to the metal at every opportunity where you would in a normal ICE car. So they've got all of this stuff going on. Now, what does that mean when it's Red Bull who are talking about it? It means that they haven't cracked the power unit problem for 2026. And it is experimental. So Max knows this. So Max is really trying to organise his future. And Max does know that the 2026 power unit is a big question mark. And he's also, so what he's doing is he believes that the team is going to have the non-performance clauses in the team contracts will come into play, which will allow him to leave Red Bull for another team. Toto believes this as well. Now, Toto knows the Mercedes power unit is going to be awesome. It is going to be awesome. There's no doubt about it. Mercedes power unit's going to be good. And you've also got to factor in that the Red Bull team has been stripped of its senior management. They've lost Adrian Newey, the best car designer in the world, bar none, to Aston Martin. You've got Christian Horner gone, and you've got Wheatley over at Sauber. So 3 key figures that were responsible for Red Bull's success, you could argue, are not there anymore. But Max is still there, and he's left. What's he left with? He's left with Helmut Marko as a sole director of Red Bull Racing. That's what's left of the senior management, of the racing senior management. So it does not look good for Red Bull, and it does not look good for Max. So why is Max on the boat? And why is this all tied into Jaun Pablo Montoya's comments? Max knows Red Bull's not going to be solid next year, and he wants out, but he can't get out because of his contract. But he knows a non-performance clause is likely to come into play, which brings us to Toto Wolff not offering George Russell a 2-year contract, and he's only going to offer him a 1-year contract. So what Jaun Pablo Montoya is saying after all of that tea is spilled is that should another team be in a position to offer George Russell a great package for 2026, he should take it. But the only team, if I was George Russell, that I would want to go to would either be a Ferrari. Well, that's not an option, is it? He's not going to get a Ferrari seat. Lewis and Leclerc. Lewis is there till end of next year minimum, and if he chooses to stay in 2027, he can. Leclerc's contract's till end of 2029, so that's not an option. McLaren, same thing. Lando and Oscar, contracts to the end of 2028. Very happy with their drivers. Why would they want to rock the boat and change? They're not going to do that. So really, at the moment, Aston Martin's looking like the team that could offer a championship winning car. We are going to see improvements in teams like Williams, but are they going to be at the front of the grid next year? It's unlikely. They're also going to be running the Mercedes power unit. So really, it's Aston Martin is going to be the option. And that's going to be from a retirement from Fernando Alonso. Now, we did see Fernando having some age-related issues, let's say, in Hungary. He had that back problem which kept him out of FP1. So it happens to every one of us. You know, you get into your mid-40s, unfortunately, the sands of time do affect you. And the G's that these guys are pulling, you do have to be. Oh, there's an advantage, obviously, being in tip-top physical condition, because you're talking about 100th making a huge difference to whether you're in Q3 or Q2, you know. So we've got to see, unless Adrian Newey delivers a car which is head and shoulders above the rest, where the advantage of the car negates the advantage of the best driver. Now, we have seen that before with a Newey car, which means we might even see Lance Stroll winning a world championship, which is the whole reason why Lawrence Stroll brought Adrian Newey in and gave him an option for the shares in the team, because he wants his son to be world champion. He's young enough. Lance Stroll's only 26. And he knows that if anyone can build a car with a big enough advantage over a driver's disadvantage, it's Adrian Newey. So when you pull all of this tea together, you've got Jaun Pablo Montoya is correct in some ways that it's going to be a 1 year. The deal on the table is going to be 1 year. And that is George's problem. And that is why he's not rushing to sign a contract. If there's an opportunity for George Russell to sign a pre-contract or an agreement with Aston Martin for 2027, well then, yeah, take the money, do a year at Mercedes, know you're out, have that deal done. Lewis did exactly the same thing at Ferrari. He knew he was going to Ferrari, signed a deal, was honest with the team, and to make that 1 year work for you. And then leave it in Toto Wolff's hands, because if for some reason that Red Bull is competitive, and Max decides he's in the best car and it's better than the Mercedes, then he's not going to go to Mercedes anyway, because he's going to have to honour his contract. The non-performance clauses are going to be met, and so he's going to be there till the end of 2028. And then Toto's then thinking, shit, who am I going to get to drive for me in 27? So that's the mess that's going on. But this is what's been in the press today. I'm going to go to the chat. Yeah, Yvonne. Eric. Hi, Eric. Great to see you in there. Yeah, vacationing with Max, gushing over Lewis. The writing's on the wall. I agree, Eric. It is. It's absolutely on the wall. And a great question. So Eric's asking, would Cadillac be able to budget for a driver like Russell? I don't. The bigger problem for Cadillac, I think, it's not the budget to bring in a top driver. It's that at this point in their career, a top driver really would drive for free in the best car. Max Verstappen said it himself. He goes, I would drive for free in the best car because they want to win. So I think Russell wouldn't want to go to a project, and Cadillac, it's got to be at least a 3-year project to see them being competitive. I might be wrong, but you got to remember, Cadillac are literally using the parts bin from Ferrari, aren't they? So that's the issue with a new team like Cadillac that's getting engines from Ferrari, getting other, like Haas literally go through the parts bin at Ferrari. That's how Haas are operating their team. Until Cadillac become, I call it 100% manufacturer. So until Cadillac bring their own power unit and literally have a 100% design car with their 100% with their own power unit, and they need a team to do that. Don't forget, because if you look at what was in the press just yesterday, Graham Loden is getting slated because he is literally poaching F1 technical people, team members and staff from Red Bull. And it's a great time to do it, because if you look at what's happening at the Red Bull team, they've lost all the senior management team from the racing organization. Christian Horner had, believe it or not, even though he was a divisive character, he had a lot of strong relationships within that team. Some people liked him there, and they don't really like what's gone on. So if Cadillac, and here's the other thing, Cadillac are offering double their salary to come and join Cadillac. That's what's being reported. So Graham Loden, in order to build an F1 team for Cadillac, he's been authorized to offer double the salaries of key personnel. So they are literally going to the Red Bull team saying, yeah, we want you. We want you to come over to our Cadillac office and we will double your salary. So again, when you look at how that subplot plays into the Red Bull team for next year, it doesn't look good. Which ultimately impacts the driver and ultimately impacts Max's decision, his opportunity to leave. So yeah, all of this is shaking out, and it's going to be fascinating. So let's see what else going on in the chat. Yvonne, what about Kimi Antonelli? Kimi Antonelli is going to be, but unless he does something horrendously wrong at Mercedes between now and the end of the season, Kimi's going to get a 1 year extension. It was always going to be a 1 year extension for a rookie anyway. So Kimi Antonelli will be a Mercedes driver next year for a year, because where is he going to go realistically? Who's going to take him for next season? I think Cadillac would take him. But would he go there? Would he get a better option somewhere else? There's not really that many seats available. It's really the Alpine seat, which is an interesting one, which actually brings me nicely onto a story that came out today. Well, it's not really a story. It was reported that Pierre Gasly, in an interview yesterday, and I love this about Pierre Gasly because I'm going to tell you what he said. He said, if I had the right car underneath me, I could beat anybody. I could be world champion. That's me paraphrasing, but that's what he said. Every metrics of overperformance index. I mean, we've done one here at F1 GRANDSTAND. We did our own overperformance index. Other organizations have done their overperformance index. Even though they're using slightly different algorithm, they all came out with very similar results. And that was that Pierre Gasly is in P1 or P2 in the overperformance index. For us here, he was P2 and he had a score of 5.5. And remember, 0 was drivers performing as expected. So a 5.5 is a phenomenal score. He is performing exceptionally well, even though he's 14th in the championship. But he's in a car that really should be, the drivers should be 19th and 20th. So when you factor that in, Pierre Gasly's confidence is not misplaced. And it has gone under the radar. And I think he's realizing that he hasn't been spoken about much in the press at all. But Pierre Gasly's performance has been one of his best seasons in Formula One, according to the overperformance index. So what does that mean for him? Well, if a top seat opened up, and this is what I was getting at. So if Mercedes lose George Russell in 27, and if Max Verstappen is still not available to drive for Mercedes in 2027, then Pierre Gasly would be a great option for Mercedes. No one's talking about this because we're talking about a couple of different steps that would need to happen. It'd have to play out perfectly, but it's possible. It's how likely it is, but it's possible. So Pierre Gasly, yeah, Yvonne, Gasly is underrated. It's totally underrated. And when you see the mainstream media talking about Gasly, they are not jumping on these overperformance index ratings. And well, they haven't done yet, but after like our fan channel, our YouTube channel has jumped on it. Maybe they do watch these things, and maybe they will bring it into the mainstream media. But Pierre Gasly is underrated. So Pierre Gasly, if things just play out perfectly, could move into a top seat with a top team next year. Because as much as I think Alpine will be an improved team, I think the success of Alpine is going to come down to who's leading that team next year. If Christian Horner takes control of that team, which is a possibility, Alpine, I think that's their best chance of really improving that car. They will improve because of the Mercedes power unit, for sure. That's going to be better. It's definitely going to be better than them, than Renault manufacturing one. But we know the Renault engine program is no more, and we know that Renault are in trouble, which is why they're trying to sell 20% of the team, if not the whole team. By the way, they originally wanted to only sell 20% of the team for £300 million, which is why the Horner interest and consortium has now come into play. But looking at the trouble that they've been having, it could be a complete team sale for 1.5 to 2B. They value it at 1.5B, but that doesn't make a difference to Gasly himself, because he's driving for Alpine next year regardless. The only thing that makes a difference for Gasly is that I think if he had a Christian Horner running that team, it could be good news for him. But there might be some bad blood, because remember, Pierre Gasly did drive for Horner 2 races in that Red Bull before they dropped him. So he's not going to be, I don't know. So I don't know, but that was a long time ago. And Gasly's improved as a driver an awful lot. He's matured and he's just got into that age. What is he, 27 now? He's matured as a driver and I think he's ready for a good seat. So that's the way things could play out for Gasly. But yeah, I really applaud him for backing himself in his interview. Because I say this a lot. You can't be an F1 driver and not believe you're the best driver on the grid, regardless of your Verstappens doing what they do. And also, I'm not 100% sure Verstappen's driving style is going to be good in the 2026 era, where you have to manage a battery which is delivering 50% of your power for a 70-lap race. Because at the moment, the battery's only delivering 15% of the power. So it's a completely different proposition in 2026. And tomorrow's show, we're going to go into all of this about the engines and the power units. We're going to go do a deep dive, so don't miss it. That's tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So that's the situation. But Gasly, fair play, mate. I think you deserve it. I mean, number 2 in our over performance index. You do deserve a good drive, and you deserve a good car. So I appreciate that, and I don't think he should get slated in the press for backing himself. I really don't. I think he deserves his. I think he deserves his opportunity in a great car. He really does. So if you just joined us, welcome to F1 Grandstand. Thanks for joining the live stream. It's we've been talking about Jaun Pablo Montoya's comments in the media, specifically in the Express. He was talking about George Russell's situation. He was basically saying George has only been offered a 1-year deal, and because of that, George Russell's in a strong position to turn around and if Aston Martin, which are in a good position to offer George a contract for 2027, if there was any way he could get in that 2026 car, he should take it and leave Mercedes in the lurch. That's basically that's me paraphrasing. What Juan Pablo says is, if George Russell doesn't drive for Mercedes in 2026, then who's going to drive for Mercedes in 2026? Who's going to be their lead driver with a brand new platform that's going to guarantee that they bring the car home and put them in the points? Because George Russell has been very, very good this season in a not a great car. And that's a good question for the chat, actually. So I'm going to ask you, who could drive for Mercedes in 2026 if George doesn't? Who could be their lead driver? Who's available? We know Max is not available, by the way, for 2026. Get in the chat. I'm really interested to know. Who do you think? Go on, hit me with it. Who do you think could be a replacement for George Russell? It's Eric, great suggestion. Do you know what? And it's a brilliant one. So Eric's jumped right in with a great suggestion for 2026. Bottas. If George Russell somehow does not sign a contract for 2026, even though Bottas is, I believe, going to Cadillac at this point, would he sign on the dotted line for Cadillac, though, if he had a Mercedes seat? No, of course. Bottas would take that Mercedes seat. You're right. It's a great suggestion, that, Eric. It's a great one. Bottas, his contract runs out at the end of this season. He's got no contract for 2026. We believe he's done a deal. He's agreed a deal with Cadillac on a handshake. But yeah. And I agree, Yvonne. Yvonne says Kimi and Gasly. So Kimi is definitely going to be driving for Mercedes next year. Gasly's an issue because Gasly's already signed up for Alpine for 2026. He's not going to be able to leave Alpine. He's contracted for 2026, so he's not available. Who's actually available? Only Bottas, who brings the car home in 60% of his races, scores points in 60% of his races. And we're in a brand new platform era, and he knows the team. I can't see past Bottas, Eric. You're right. If George doesn't drive for Mercedes in 2026, Max has to drive now because because he hasn't got an out from Red Bull for 2026. So if George doesn't sign, Bottas is the best suggestion. Who else is there? Yeah, Yvonne, that's right. Alpine are going to be using the Mercedes powertrain for 2026, 2027. They'll be using it, I think. Alpine will probably be using the Mercedes powertrain for till 2030, I would guess. But yeah, it's a great question, that. And I'm thinking about it. Who else could drive? If George doesn't sign, who else would be available? So Yuki Tsunoda, he ain't getting that drive. Oh, that's an interesting one. Liam Lawson has not signed a deal for 2026 yet. Isaac Hadjar hasn't signed a deal for 2026 yet. Could they go with? Could they take a Mercedes seat? Well, they could from a contract point of view. Would it be what Mercedes really want though? Because you've got Kimi Antonelli. You can't. How can you have two rookies? So this is the thing that. So going back to the whole point of tonight's show, when Montoya was talking about the situation, what he's basically saying is, if George Russell is unavailable to Mercedes in 2026, it doesn't look that great, does it, for Mercedes of who they're going to put in that car? And that's the point. So what Montoya is saying is that George Russell, either you've got Mercedes over a barrel, and if they're only going to give you a 1-year deal, then make it pay. You know, instead of it being 30 million, charge them 50 million. I mean, he's in a great position to negotiate at that point because he knows, because Mercedes have shown their cards. Mercedes have shown their cards. I mean, Toto has played his hand right in front of George and said, hey, I want Max. I think Max is going to be available for 27. So it's not, if the contracts, if Max gets a break in his contract because of non-performance at Red Bull, that's the only way he's going to be available in 27. So, but Toto believes that's going to be the case. And he's saying that to George. So George is now going, okay, Toto, you played your cards. Well, if you want me in 26, because your problem year, Toto, is going to be 2026, isn't it? That's your problem year where you really need me. So, all right, give me $100 million. And that's what Montoya is saying. Your opportunity, George, is right now to negotiate. And if they're not going to give you a 2-year deal, well then, either if a better team can somehow work it out that there's a seat available in 26 and 27 in a competitive car, take it. And if not, then if you're going to say Mercedes for 1 year, then you need to screw Mercedes down for every penny because they're screwing you. That's what he's saying. Eric, going back to the chat. So Eric, I still think he's going to Cadillac, but from Mercedes' perspective, Bottas would be the best option remaining. I agree with you, Eric. That's what I believe as well. I believe the only way Bottas would do a U-turn from the Cadillac seat would be if George Russell somehow goes to another team for 26 and Mercedes are in a tight spot and they need an experienced driver to drive with Kimi, and a driver that's got the stats that Bottas has. You cannot fault Bottas's ability to bring the car home. He's had 30% of his races are podiums, 60% of his races are point scoring. And I think Mercedes wouldn't really have another option if George Russell. And here's the other thing. So going back to the Aston Martin link for George Russell. If Fernando Alonso declares himself unfit for 2026 because he's decided he is unfit, I don't think he will. We're speculating here. We're just speculating. And I'm only saying it because he had a bit of a back issue in his last race. And if he just decides, oh, I don't want to do this again, I don't think he will, because I think Fernando Alonso will drive until as long as he possibly can. But in this hypothetical situation we're talking about, that under mutual agreement, Alonso doesn't drive for Aston Martin next year, that changes everything. It changes everything. Because Aston Martin are in a position where they need a number one driver and a good driver. They need a driver that fits their brand, and need a driver who Adrian Newey is happy with, as he's now an owner of the team. And it's hard to look past George Russell because, again, the Max problem still exists. Max isn't going to be available. We know Max and Newey obviously have got a connection because of the Red Bull years, winning. But George Russell that could change the situation. I don't think that's going to happen. It would need things to play out in a very, very specific way. But yeah, I don't know. But you're right. The right one. There's always the drivers who are under contract for huge sums of money. If teams want to take those drivers, then they can pay out a driver's contract and pay compensation to a team. If that's a clause in the contract, that's the other thing. You can only buy out a driver's contract if there is a clause in there that says this is how much it would cost to buy out the contract. And if that clause isn't there, well, then you need the participation and agreement from the team. And that fee has to be agreed. And a team might turn around and go, no, if you take Gasly, who've we got? Who are we going to put in that seat? So it all depends, and every contract is different, Yvonne. That's the only thing. So it's possible, but it's not a guarantee that that can happen with a driver. It's not a guarantee. But then you also, but if everyone's unhappy, how's that driver going to drive for you when he knows that you've not allowed him to leave because you've played the contract that says we don't have to let you leave, you have to drive for us? That just creates, oh God, could you imagine driving a team in that under those circumstances? It'd be horrendous. But like I say, that it's a little bit more complicated than just buying out a driver's contract. But yeah. And Eric says, I just get back pain from sleeping. Yeah, I know what you mean. I've done that. I've woke up with, do you know what? I'm going to tell you a quick story. So I woke up one day once, I'd gone to sleep and I woke up one day and I couldn't move my arm. It was like numb. Okay. I was like, what is going on? I hadn't injured it, hadn't banged it, hadn't been playing any sport. It just numb. I just went to sleep. I went to the doctor and the doctor said, oh, you've got a trapped nerve. And he found this little pressure point, did some acupuncture on it. And then luckily over the next few days, I could start moving my arm again. That was just from sleeping. So imagine the G-forces in an F1 car, what can happen. Yeah, that true story. Just from turning 40, that. Honestly. Crazy. You get older, these weird things happen. So yeah, Eric, I feel you. I feel your pain. And yeah, going back to Yvonne in the chat, both are staying at Red Bull. You're talking about when I mentioned that Liam Lawson's contract's up in 2025 and Isaac Hadjar's up in 2025. You are right. They haven't signed on the dotted line yet, but a document got leaked. And the way it looks right now is Hadjar's going to be driving for Red Bull alongside Max in 26. And Liam Lawson is going to extend his contract for 2026 and be driving the Racing Bull in the Racing Bulls alongside Lindblad. That's what we're looking at. Yes, Yvonne, I'm over 40, just. But yeah, this is how it all plays out. It's an interesting one with the contracts, but going back to the original point, the George Russell position is a powerful one for George, but it's also, he can't be feeling that great about Toto's persistent pursuing of Max Verstappen when he must be thinking, why are you doing it? I'm a number one driver. I'm a number one driver. So I'm gonna sort of wrap this up as best I can and give you what the options look like. So the options look like this. George signs for 1 year at Mercedes and he screws them for a lot more money because they need him for 26. They haven't really got any other options. They've got Bottas possibly, but really, as we've been discussing it, there isn't really a real true number one driver better than George Russell available for 26. So he signs a 1 year deal and he screws them for money and he takes big money because he knows Toto doesn't really want him as a number one driver. He wants Max Verstappen. So, or he signs a 1 year deal with Mercedes and tries to do a deal like what Hamilton did with Ferrari and try and do a deal with Aston Martin for 27. But Aston Martin, because of the Newey connection, might not want to do that because Verstappen looks like he will come available in 27 because we don't think the Red Bull car is going to be very good because of all the evidence that we've talked about. So he goes to Mercedes. Aston Martin will think they can pay him a lot of money to go to Aston Martin and the Newey connection. But I think we can, because of the holidaying and because of what's been going on, we're pretty sure he'll be going to Mercedes. However, if some strange chain of events means that Red Bull has a very competitive car next year and there is no getting out of his contract, then he's going to be driving for Red Bull in 27. Plus, Max Verstappen is a mercenary. He won't care about these conversations with Toto. If Red Bull give him a championship winning car, he will not care. Max just wants to win. He'll just want to win. So that could play out like that. So Toto has put himself in a slightly vulnerable position with George. If George somehow gets some crazy offer from another team where they can offer him a drive in 26 and 27 in a competitive car. So that's how it's all looking at the minute. And it's Jaun Pablo Montoya who's been stirring the pot in the press. And you can find the article in the Express today. So yeah, some crazy moves. So yeah, that's how it's looking. I've loved the chat tonight. There's been so much chat going on. Eric, Yvonne, Gemma, so much going on. I loved it. Thanks for getting involved. Thanks for watching. So this has been F1 Grandstand. Please like, comment, join the community, subscribe and hit the bell so you can keep up to date. It really does make a huge difference to the success of the channel. And like I say every night, I'm so grateful to have you all with us. Tomorrow's show, by the way, 8 o'clock, is going to be all about the power units and what's been going on in the press, what the FIA have been saying. It's a good one. It's a deep dive. Don't miss it. That's tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So put it in your diary. I'll be back tomorrow with more news at 8 o'clock. All about the engines and power units of 2026. I will see you then.